Good. Happy Friday morning, February 11, 2022. I'm Riley King. Welcome to this Friday morning edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. We have a lot of news to get to this Friday morning, so let's get started right now. First up, FBI looking for Route 91 bandit who allegedly robbed 11 banks in 4 states. Offer $10,000 reward for information. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
As one of the region's largest family-owned energy providers, Eastern Propane and Oil knows a thing or two about.
November surveillance video from a Massachusetts bank shows the man dubbed the Route 91 bandit entering an office and handing an employee a note. Then they go into the safe room. Moments later, he's handed a stack of cash, and less than a minute after that, he's gone.
He does have significant interaction with the employees, which creates a greater danger for them.
The FBI is trying to track down the suspect, who is considered armed and dangerous, saying he's robbed banks in 4 states up and down Route 91 between September and January, including the Savings Bank of Walpole in Keene back on November 20th.
He's robbed 11 banks via note, has threatened a weapon in many of them, and tried to gain access to a vault in many of the robberies.
Investigators believe he may be driving a newer model Nissan sedan. He's described as average height, medium build, with blue eyes, light-colored hair, usually wearing a hood or hat, and white sneakers. The FBI is offering a $10,000 reward for information that leads to an arrest and conviction.
Well, he's definitely familiar with the area, in the route at least. It could be region-based, and we're not really sure where he may reside.
Investigators hoping someone recognizes the Route 91 bandit.
We're trying to stop this individual before he hurts someone, which is why we're offering the $10,000 reward.
And anyone who may recognize that suspect can call their local police department or nearest FBI office. Reporting live tonight, Mike Cronin, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Group rallying together for missing 7-year-old Harmony Montgomery. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
So, you need a new roof, but you have so many questions. Should I get a metal roof or asphalt shingles? Are the materials and work...
Tonight, those close to Harmony Montgomery are pressing forward, hoping to bring the missing 7-year-old home. A small group of people who say they are part of Harmony's army met at Calibas Park in Manchester tonight, something they plan to do every other week.
We deserve to keep saying her name, and that's our job, to keep saying her name and to raise awareness. Where is Harmony Montgomery?
If you have any information on where Harmony could be, you're asked to call or text the number on your screen anytime. That is 603-203-6060.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Opioid overdose rates in Manchester, Nashua, highest since April 2018. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
As one of the region's largest family-owned energy providers, Eastern Propane and Oil knows a thing or two about.
Well, according to a report from American Medical Response Ambulance Services, there were 95 opioid overdoses in Manchester and Nashua in the month of January alone. That's a number the two cities haven't seen since April of 2018.
Opioid overdoses are on the rise again in New Hampshire after falling steadily since the start of the pandemic.
We were really lucky in New Hampshire, one of only 3 states to see a reduction in deaths and overdoses last year.
Chris Staywaz is the regional director of American Medical Response Ambulance Service. He says the overdose numbers seen in the Granite State since the start of the new year have been frustrating.
It's about a 50-50 split of the number of people that we encounter who are overdosing for the first time or overdosing multiple times. So there's still a pretty large pipeline of people that are coming into this epidemic for the first time.
AMR released statistics today that show there were 95 overdoses between Manchester and Nashua in January. 9 of them were deadly. Also today, the CDC announced it may change guidelines for doctors prescribing opioid pain relievers and no longer suggest limiting opioid use for acute pain to just 3 days.
I actually think that's probably a good thing because there were some people when that initial ruling came out that depend on opioids because they are very useful in a lot of cases, and they depend upon them. But there were some drastic cuts that came down through to some people who really rely on that medically for an important part of their health care.
The current guideline came in response to the opioid epidemic. It limited the amount of opioid painkillers doctors could prescribe and curbed painkiller abuse in a sense, but in turn, the people hooked on pills began switching to more dangerous drugs like heroin and fentanyl, which has been seen a lot in Manchester and Nashua. Experts are still looking for a way to combat opioid use and say the availability of Narcan has made a big difference.
And that has unquestionably saved countless lives.
And local opioid experts say any changes to the CDC's guidance need to be done so delicately so people are taken care of, but they're not abusing such drugs. The CDC now opens a 60-day public comment hearing before those changes officially go into effect. We're live in Manchester tonight. Scott Cook, WMUR News.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Investigators warn New Hampshire parents to monitor children's internet activity. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
So, you need a new roof, but you have so many questions. Should I get a metal roof or asphalt shingles? Are the materials...
Whenever someone surfs the internet or uses a social app on their mobile device, they're susceptible to online predators, but there are authorities working to protect them, and they're not all human.
There's a wide variety of applications that are out there that are actually tracking kids and tracking where they are, and so for that reason we're concerned.
The Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force consists of state, local, county, and federal authorities charged with investigating online sexual exploitation of children. And they're busy, fielding 80 to 120 complaints per month in New Hampshire alone.
One of our biggest fears is that we're not going to be able to get to everybody in time, and so we need parents to get involved and be aware of what's going on so that they can monitor their kids' activity online.
Jumping into the fight is Nico, a canine officer with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. He's a 3-year-old yellow lab and an electronic storage detection canine, trained to sniff out a chemical compound found on all cell phones, computers, hard drives, thumb drives, etc. It's used to keep a device from overheating.
We deploy him in the homes of suspected internet predators. His sole job is to find evidence maybe hidden within that home that we can then take back to our lab to search and process.
Nico is one of only 66 dogs in the country that can do what he does.
Show me. Show me. Yes, good boy.
Officials say protection for the kids begins at home. With a wide variety of online and mobile applications available, parents need to be aware of what their kids are using.
Moms and dads need to get on there. They need to look at the apps. They need to do research on those applications to determine what's a good fit for their child.
Now, authorities say researching an app can be as simple as downloading a YouTube video, learning what the app is all about, and how it's used. In the newsroom, Jason King, WMUR News.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. More than 100 New Hampshire children live in group homes as child protection issues in state comes into focus. Let's take a listen to that video from WMUR News 9.
As As one of the region's largest family-owned energy providers, Eastern Propane and Oil knows.
Behind these doors on Amherst Street in Nashua live 37 Granite State children. The youngest is 9. 29 are 12 and older. They have caseworkers and therapists, but not a real home. Mark Linehan is a guardian ad litem who works with several older youth living in New Hampshire group homes.
Every time I see these kids, they say, they got a home for me. Do you have a home? And we don't have a home. So after 20 months or 22 months, I mean, really, they've lost hope.
I mean, we recognize that we're an institution, okay, but we try and operate in a non-institutional way.
Nashua Children's Home is one of 10 group homes in the state. NCH Director David Vigliotti has worked here for 37 years and is proud of the many long-tenured staffers at the home.
We have enough longevity that, kids do form attachments and connections here that they keep.
According to data from the Department of Health and Human Services, 300 youth ages 12 to 17 are in state care. 134 of them are in group homes. Experts urge states to minimize congregate living for children because studies show the transition into adulthood can be difficult. The Office of the Child Advocate, OCA, is an independent state agency overseeing all state programs associated with the care of children. The office launched an investigation of Nashua Children's Home in 2020 in response to 17 complaints and incidents reported by legislators, children, and guardians ad litem.
We received a cascade of complaints about the facility.
The findings published 14 months later cited areas of most concern were the use of isolation and physical restraints as behavioral tools.
We thought that, some of the information in there was misleading. Some of it was patently false. And we really think it belies, a lack of understanding of residential group care.
This is the Quiet Room, described in the report as a significant venue in the use of physical restraints. 219 critical incidents were reported to the OCA from July 2020 to June 2021. A former child resident is quoted in the report. Everybody hated that quiet room because it was just a white room. You're supposed to face in, but I have anxiety, and I couldn't. They told me to turn around, but I couldn't.
Our belief is that mostly critics of this have never been in a position to have to respond to a kid that's out of control like that.
The OCA report was published in December 2021. There is space reserved for DHHS, the agency that oversees the care of children in state custody, to respond. They did not.
There was no response from the department. That was the unfortunate thing.
News 9 asked DHHS why it did not respond to the report and received an exclusive response that did not address NCH specifically and that Moira O'Neill says she has not seen. It states in part, quote, the state recently transitioned to a contract-based model for residential treatment services, which will define clear and consistent expectations for all contracted providers. This transition is a key piece in establishing a robust system of care for children and youth. In July 2021, for the first time in its history, the governor and executive council approved a nearly $10 million three-year contract with Nashua Children's Home. Moira O'Neill hopes the move from vendor to state contract will lead to modernizing training and methods.
I can tell you in 37 years, the science of child development, understand about brains, what we understand about trauma, has revolutionized. It's not the same as it was before.
We think our staff should get a lot more, kudos and recognition and congratulations than they do, rather than be criticized by somebody sitting up on, Pleasant Street in an office or sitting at home.
Back here on Amherst Street, children are in a system, but would much rather be in a home.
They've already had a failed adoption. They've already had failed birth parents. So they've lost hope.
According to the Department of Health and Human Services, there are 662 licensed foster homes in the state right now. The agency needs 1,000 homes to place children in need. There is a particular need for additional foster parents willing to serve older youth, children with disabilities, and sibling groups. For News 9 Investigates, I'm Amy Cavino.
Okay, there you go on that video and that report. Man convicted in 1993 killing of 20-year-old Alaska woman. Let's take a listen to that video.
So, you need a new roof, but you have so many questions. Should I get a metal roof or asphalt shingles? Are the materials...
Stephen Downs' arrest came as a surprise to him.
The Maine State Police knocked on his door. It came totally out of the blue. He's lived a quiet life here in Auburn. He had a nice home on a dead-end street.
The charges, sexual assault and murder, stemming from Downs' freshman year in college 26 years earlier in Alaska, after DNA evidence allegedly linked him to the crime. James Hawanick is his defense attorney.
He's been screaming his innocence from day one. He's absolutely certain there's got to be some sort of mistake. We, as his defense lawyers, are convinced there's been some sort of very, very serious error here.
An Auburn native, Downs graduated Edward Little High School in 1992 and decided to go to college 4,000 miles away at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. As an 18-year-old freshman, Downs lived in Bartlett Hall, an 8-floor dorm, where on April 26, 1993, the body of 20-year-old Sophie Sergey was discovered in a bathtub inside the second-floor women's bathroom. On leave that semester, Sergey had been visiting friends. Her murder unsolved for 3 decades. After graduating college in Alaska, Stephen Downs got an MBA and then a nursing degree before moving back to Maine. For years, he lived alone in this house in Auburn, supporting himself as a nurse until February 2019. That's when Alaska State Police filed charges.
This arrest is the culmination of years of effort and tenacious attention by this department to solve a horrendous murder.
Accusing Downs of raping Sergey, stabbing her multiple times in the face, and shooting her in the head.
Suspect DNA was discovered during the investigation, and a unique suspect profile was identified from the DNA.
DNA swabs of Sergey's body found sperm, but its DNA profile was not in the FBI's national database, so no matches, as Sergey's family waited and hoped for justice.
Months turned into years, and active leads became sparse.
Until 2018, a lead that led to Stephen Downs, a new tool called genetic genealogy, pioneered by Parabon Nanolabs in Virginia.
What we do is just a hint, a tip.
C.C. Moore, the company's chief genetic genealogist, wouldn't discuss the pending Downs case specifically, but described how the process has generally worked to help solve 155 crimes to date. She compares crime scene DNA with DNA profiles accessible to law enforcement from 2 popular consumer DNA testing sites, GED Match and Family Tree DNA, which currently store about 1.6 million profiles.
We're reverse engineering people's family trees, but we're not actually accessing anyone's DNA file or DNA code. All we're getting is a list of matches, which is generated through comparing the unknown crime scene DNA to all those DNA files of the people that are participating in those 2 databases.
Downs' aunt, who lives in Vermont, had uploaded her profile to GED Match. Moore discovered a 23% match with the Alaska crime scene DNA, and that's very high in her trade.
If you only share about 1% of your DNA, you're most likely a third cousin. So you share great-great-grandparents. If you have a 25% match, it's a second-degree relative. So it's a limited number of possible relationships with that. That's going to be a half-sibling, an aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, grandparent, grandchild.
Results of the testing revealed the likely suspect to be Stephen H. Downs.
When Alaska detectives questioned Downs in February 2019, he gave them a DNA sample, a swab of his cheek, pursuant to a search warrant. The Maine Crime Lab confirmed his profile matched the crime scene DNA, prompting Downs' arrest. Defense attorney Jim Hawanick argues the DNA probe violated Downs' Fourth Amendment constitutional right against unlawful searches.
The question of whether law enforcement can go into these public DNA profiles and access them without a warrant to look for your DNA. I don't think people should, in the public realm, have access to my DNA unless I authorize it.
They cannot arrest someone based on a genetic genealogy lead alone. They have to build the case, do the traditional investigation, and collect that DNA that they can compare to their traditional forensic profile.
The admissibility of DNA evidence gathered this way has yet to be decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. Hawanik says, other than the DNA evidence, there is no gun, no knife, no fingerprints in the bathtub where Sergei's body was found, and no witnesses who saw Downs at the crime scene.
There's a DNA profile that's been connected to the crime scene. Whether the biological material was the result of a sexual assault, whether it was the result of a consensual sexual contact, whether it was the result of a contact that was transferred from person to person, that's the big mystery here. But the bottom line is that's about all they have.
Justice for Sophie is finally within reach.
No one in Alaska law enforcement, no prosecutors, state police, or retired detectives would discuss the case. The judge in Alaska has scheduled a 7-week trial to begin early next year. In Auburn, Phil Hirschkorn, WMTW News 8.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And that does it for this morning edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. I hope you all enjoyed watching and have a wonderful day, everyone. Goodbye.